But the core of you and your sort of self-identity, being gay is a really important part of that.
Sure, being gay is a big part of that, because that has a connection to love and who I love and who I spend my life with and the family that I'm going to build. But also where I grew up in the United States probably formed who I am. So growing up in the South in a very conservative atmosphere, growing up in the military and understanding what that meant.
But the two are woven together in a sense, because I think it's right to say that you had an awareness of being different and of being gay, whether you put it that way to yourself or not. You had an awareness that you were different very early in your childhood.
Oh, sure.
And that was something that in the community you came from, the religion that you were born into, that was tough.
You mean with the Mormons? Yeah.
Well, your mum was a pretty observant Mormon, wasn't she?
My mom, my father's entire side of the family were very devout Mormon. I was very devout Mormon growing up. So I believed what I was hearing, including around 7 years old, the church beamed in the Mormon prophet from Salt Lake City. We were living out in Texas, and they lowered a screen, and his white-haired, face came on that screen, very, very imposing.
As close to God as you could probably get.
I mean, it was very godlike. It was very intimidating. And I'll never forget him saying, next to the sin of murder comes the sin of sexual impurity, homosexuality. Now, I might not have known what that meant at that moment, but I soon learned. At first, I thought it was just a fabulous new Scrabble word because it had an X in it and all those syllables. But soon I learned it meant that I would bring great shame to myself and to my family if anyone found out that I had a crush on the boy down the street, which I did. That I would also be going to hell. I would not be with my Heavenly Father. And that if I did fall in love, it would be something that would have to be hidden, suppressed. Imagine.
That's an enormous darkness to take right through childhood, through adolescence and into early adulthood, without being able to discuss it really with anybody.
Yeah, there's no one to discuss it with, because you'd be in trouble with anyone you discussed it with. If I discussed it in the military, you couldn't even be openly gay in the military at the time. You'd be kicked out. If I discussed it with anyone in our society, which was very conservative of it at the time, I would be in great trouble. In some places, it was still a crime.
You'd sort of be expelled.
I would certainly be expelled from the things that create community where I'm from. So from my church and from my neighborhood and from my school, I would be a pariah. That creates isolation. And that isolation makes young, talented LGBTQ people fade and stop trying to excel, stop trying to stick out in positive ways. And for me, that isolation ultimately lent to thoughts of taking my own life. Because you tell a young person that when they first feel love, that's not going to lead to things like dates and the prom or marriage, but that it could lead to prison or electroshock therapy and certainly disownment from your church and your home. You start to wonder, what is the purpose of living?